views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL, but we're the ones that have encouraged you all along to like and share them on your favorite social media and with all your friends and neighbors, because it's time for the Science of Caring, presented by Carebag. It's called Careology and is hosted by the one and only Miles McGrath.
Cliff, thank you so much, and it's just, I can't believe it's already the second week in January. It's incredible. Where's the third week? Third week in January. My gosh, things are going quick.
We're almost done with January.
It's amazing, amazing. I appreciate you setting up the show, Cliff, and you are absolutely right. Carebag is the organization, and out of Carebag came Careology. And it was a dream of Roxy Brown, who's away. She had some family that she's tending to this week and asked me to do this show. And I was lucky enough to run into somebody a while back, Joshua Mason, who runs with his partner ACTON Academy. We're going to introduce him in a little bit. But before I do that, I want to tell you some things that are happening with Carebag. We have our Aloha Brunch, as I mentioned last week, coming up this Saturday, January 20th. So if that's something you're interested in doing, I highly recommend. There's a few seats left. People are buying up whole tables for this event. Congressman Brian Mass is going to be there. Jeff Luck, he's a former NFL player. He'll be our MC. It's going to be January 20th at the Cape Club in Palm City at 11 a.m. A great opportunity to rub elbows with folks that care about the community and want to help, have a fun time, and give back. So if you are interested, please reach out to Carebag. You can reach us on our website. It's carebag.fl.org. And what does Carebag do? Well, if you don't know what we do, let me just give you a little explanation. We provide hygiene products for folks that we call our folks that don't have a home. So they may not have access to shampoo, toothpaste, things of that nature. They may not have access to a shower. We actually have 2 mobile shower units that we send around the Treasure Coast at different locations and allow them to get a shower, which if you haven't had a shower in a few days, you know how wonderful it is to have a shower. So some of these folks may haven't showered in a week or a month. We provide them with a place to do that. We provide them with dignity. We provide them with towels and things of that nature. We also at Carebag believe that it's not just one nonprofit that can help. We partner with other nonprofits. We make sure that that population gets what they need. And that's where Careology came from. And so we want to reach out to the community. And so when I run into folks that are helping the community and doing good things for the community, I invite them on the show. And that's where I met Joshua at one of my networking groups. And he and his partner started a part of ACTON Academy here in PSL. So Joshua Mason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Miles. Thanks for having me.
All the way from Hawaii.
Kind of, in one sense.
So how long have you lived in Florida, Joshua?
We moved to Florida, my wife and I, at the very end of February 2021.
Wow. Mm-hmm. What a time to move to Florida. I mean, a lot of people kind of pick that time, but what was that transition like from, did you move directly from Hawaii to Florida?
No, we actually left Hawaii in 2019. We were in Austin, Texas for a good portion of that time between mid 2019 and beginning of 2021. I was doing an MBA program affiliated, by the way, called the ACTON School of Business, which is kind of in the same network as these ACTON Academies. So yeah, there was a bit of it wasn't quite from Hawaii to Florida.
Gotcha. Now, before we get into our interview, my little voice is reminding me that today is Martin Luther King Day. Mm-hmm. And I really am overwhelmed with thinking about what I can say about a man that Martin Luther King Jr., who has accomplished so many things. But I was talking to my daughter last night, and I try to do a little research on this, but just, I guess I will share my thoughts in my unique perspective, from my point of view, as somebody who's not African American, but born the year that we lost Martin Luther King Jr., 1968. And from my perspective, as we think about Martin Luther King Day, somebody before the internet was able to be the point person to bring hundreds of thousands of people together to Washington, D.C., to bring a voice to, you know, a problem we had in this country where we couldn't really face the fact that all people weren't being treated equal, and to be that kind of beginning of a change that we still are in the middle of, that we can overcome this discrimination, and really gave his life for that. Was he a perfect human being? No, but through that, he still was able to bring people together, to allow people to come together, and to do it in a way of nonviolence, and to be that point person and risk his family to do that. And it really is a challenge for all of us. What do we really believe? And what are we willing to give our lives for? And that's what I'm remembering today on Martin Luther King Day. What are you willing to give your life for? What's your cause and what's your mission? And Joshua, I think I'm sensing that from you, that you have a mission in education and teaching children. And weren't you a teacher in Hawaii?
I was, yeah, I was a teacher.
And that was this public school system?
Correct. Yep.
So what was that like in Hawaii, being a teacher, and what were some of the lessons that you learned from that?
Sure. I mean, I was an emergency hire. Hawaii has a shortage of teachers. I don't know if it exists anymore, but I'd be surprised if it didn't. And I grew up in a family of educators, at least on a religious education side. My dad worked as a religious educator. My mom was a volunteer one. And I've always loved education in general. So it was a great opportunity, because there was always this thing in the back of my head asking, would I want to do education? Would I want to be a teacher? And that opportunity came up, because I didn't study education in college, right? I was an emergency hire. They have certain, there's differences in how you're hired and all that, but I studied psychology and music, believe it or not. So it was a very interesting experience, especially because it was a public school, but it was actually on a military base. So most of the kids, like 95%, weren't local. So yeah, it was a very fascinating experience. It was 7th grade. I was part of the special resource unit. So you have your classes for, children with severe special needs, right? Down syndrome, serious learning impairments. It wasn't that group. It was groups, kids with either severe ADHD or some Asperger's, autism, things like that. And essentially helping them to transition so they could be in a class with all the other middle schoolers. And in fact, I was like a co-teacher in one group where we had maybe 5 or 6 of these kids in that class. And I was over them, but we had a main teacher, right? And there were 20 other kids in the class. Yeah.
What were some of the breakthroughs that you experienced in that group?
Oh man, there were these 2 boys who always were feuding, man. It was a problem. And I remember one time we just sat down and I said, what are we going to do about this, guys? Like, they were, because they both, one had Asperger's, one had, I can't remember anymore. It's been a while. And sitting down and just talking with them to try to encourage them, do you have to speak up when so-and-so says this, right? Do you have to make that comment when he says that? Do you have to, oh gosh, you're taking me back now. I have to like dig deep to find these,
It's all about the deep tracks.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've talked about that. There was also a situation of, in the resource class where it was specifically for those kids who weren't yet ready to transition into being in one of the other middle school classes. You were supposed to have a co-teacher, and apparently, this is what they said, and so what happened. I was very effective at my job, so that we actually had the co-teacher. She was able to go help in other classes, so it was just me for a long time, which I felt pretty good about, because I felt like, hey, I'm doing my job enough that we didn't need that co-teacher there, right? So that was like a personal win, but definitely helping some of them, like, for them, so much of the issue was it was like they needed more of the character education, honestly, more than they needed of the math or writing education, because they have these conditions, these neurodiversities. They're going to live with those. They need to learn how to manage those, right? Because they could be a whiz in math, but if they're fighting with coworkers all the time, causing a problem in the workplace.
But what I liked what you said is you asked them a question,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of your hallmarks. So they were able to kind of think through the solution instead of telling them what they had to do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was a little bit of a breakthrough for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So from Hawaii being, thrown into that environment, where did the inspiration come to get into ACTON Academy? How did you even find out about it? Like, where did that seed of thought come from?
Sure. So I had left the teaching job after a couple months, actually. And about 6 months later, I heard about applications for this MBA program, Acton School of Business. I was thinking about getting a graduate degree, and I'd heard about the program before from an entrepreneur friend of mine. And I was wanting to be an entrepreneur, but felt like I didn't have the grit. I don't know. There's just certain things as an entrepreneur you have to be very comfortable with. And this MBA was focused on entrepreneurship. So when I saw that they were taking in new applications, I decided to apply. It was a free application, which is rare for grad school. So I was like, why not, right? Let's see if I get in. And funny enough, I didn't originally, but they had a class. They had 2,000 applications that year, and they only had 50 spots open. It was a small MBA program. And I guess some of the other people dropped out. So I actually got a call back, offering me one of their positions. So I started that in 2019. It was a virtual semester for first semester, then it was an on-campus semester, and it's an accelerated program. They often called it like the business boot camp, because it was a 100-hour work week type of program. You could not do the program.
Stress the word accelerated.
Yes, yeah, right. Most MBAs are 2 years. This was in under a year. So I did the virtual semester while still in Hawaii. Then it came time for the on-campus one. My wife was in need of surgery as well, and we decided to come back to the mainland so she could do that and be around family while I did the MBA. So went to Austin for this MBA. From there, discovered ACTON Academy. Funny enough, I know we'll talk about it later, but they had a children's business fair, and it's the original one because it's the one in Austin. And I went to that first, and I saw, I guess we'll get into that another time because there's a whole lot to say there. But just seeing the competence in the children, and as young as 6.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, they were true entrepreneurs. The best one, the best memory, at least that I still have to this day, is one child had these like 3D printed boxes, rectangular boxes with a strap through them, and it had like an art design of a dog bone. What is this? And it was $3, and he said his grandma used to, whenever she would need to clip the nails of her dog, she would rub peanut butter on her leg so the dog would bend over her other leg.
Genius.
Right? Lick it and be distracted. But he noticed there was a problem. Then her leg was covered in, saliva and peanut butter. So he thought, what if you had a little box with a strap that you could wrap around your leg, put the peanut butter in the box so it all stays contained, the mess, right? Put that on, have your dog eat out of that, clip the nails. And I was like, that's entrepreneurship 101. He literally saw a problem and thought there's got to be a way to solve this. My grandma's dirty after,
Right.
clipping my dog's nails. And I was like, what is happening with these children? And I discovered that most of them were going to ACTON.
Pure creativity.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So then that's how I got exposed to ACTON. I got offered to do an apprenticeship there upon graduating with my MBA. And I was in love with the model right away.
And they had an open area in Florida? Is that what got you to Florida, or was there other reasons that you came to Florida?
That's a great question. No, I wasn't apprenticing with ACTON anymore. When we moved here, my wife studies marine biology, and
Can't pick a better spot than Florida.
Right. We were in Hawaii before, and Austin's landlocked, so
Right.
we were like, well, let's try Florida.
Right.
And that was the main reason.
So the marine biology, and then obviously you saw a need here Florida.
Absolutely.
Now you have a partner that you both started this ACTON Academy.
Mhm.
Who is your partner?
Her name's Allison, and she's great. She was a guide for an Acton down in Palm Beach.
Okay.
So she was an employee there, but she wanted to be an owner of one, and I wanted a co-owner. So we connected, and I was like, "Do you want to be my co-owner?"
Tandem.
Right?
I like
It was
it.
perfect.
I like it.
And to be honest, I say this, and I'm always like, I know this might sound weird at first, but it was like, I kind of realized I need a mom.
I think we all need a mom.
I need someone who like knows moms, has
Right.
children the same age, and so it was a perfect fit in so many ways.
Now when was the first in Port St. Lucie? You guys have a facility that you're renting out of where's the location?
It's based out of a church over on Del Rio Boulevard. We're just renting a few.
Okay, this is your first first full year is gonna
Correct.
be from when to when? When did it actually? Was it August?
Yeah, August 14th, I believe.
And you had how many students?
We started with 8 actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
you start with 8 students, and it's going to go all the way till. Or do you take a traditional summer off, or how does that? What is your? Because your way you do things is a little unique. So what is
Sure.
your like? Let's talk about the calendar. I guess would be a good place to start.
Yeah. So we're in session for usually 5 to 6 weeks. Then we do a 1-week break. So for example, I think our first 1-week break was the last week of September. Right. So we have these 1-week breaks throughout the year. This is in part so that our guides have an opportunity, and our guides are our version of teachers, which we can get into, but to prepare for the next session, because there's usually a theme with each session. It's also a chance, we want families to be able to spend time together, to be able to travel throughout the year. And so, some of our families packed up their bags and went and visited family up north, right? So we go like that. We have a traditional, Christmas break, have the holidays off. We're not in session today, but we go until the first week of June.
Okay.
Last week.
Gotcha. And what if somebody's listening to the show and what is your age group for this start off that you have right now? Is it K through, what is it?
K through 4, so ages 5 to 9 about. Yeah.
Are you able to take on new students that haven't started with the process, or?
Yeah, we actually we had one just join us this January.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a possibility if somebody. I mean, obviously you have a limit to how many you could take, but you still have room for more.
Yeah, we have rolling admissions.
Okay,
called,
rolling
right?
admission.
Yeah,
okay, I knew there was a term for it. Okay,
right.
Okay. So let's get into the kind of philosophy of
Okay.
ACTON Academy. I was perusing the website, and one of the things that really kind of blew my mind was I'm a big fan of the George Lucas infatuation with the hero's journey and his support of the man, the hero with 1,000 faces. And I'm speaking of the legendary man who put this all together, whose name is now escaping me. Joseph Campbell. And I was like in love with those interviews on PBS years ago that Lucas kind of did. And so how did that relationship with ACTON Academy and that hero's journey become like a centerpiece of the whole training of your students?
That's a great question. I mean, in one sense, you'd have to ask the founder of how he made that connection originally. But I know that it's stayed because we found that framework to apply to the learners who are, at our studio, our classroom, as we call it. All of us are on a hero's journey.
I was just going to say that.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're constantly on it, right? I mean,
so let's.
Okay.
For those that don't know what the hero's journey is, I know it's a cycle that repeats itself, but what are the stages? And I think of everybody can think of Star Wars because that's the perfect representation of it that George Lucas used. But what is the hero's journey, if you could define it?
Right. Most of the greatest stories we can all think of all have the hero's journey in some way. Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, right? It starts off, you have your hero who is in the ordinary world, right? Luke is on Tatooine in the desert, right? With his uncle and aunt. They receive a call to adventure. Some kind of mission is somehow bestowed upon them or they're made aware of. Along the way in this adventure, they have a guide, a mentor, right? Gandalf, Dumbledore, Yoda. Right. They have allies or partners, right? Samwise Gamgee, Han Solo. And then they usually have tools as well, right? Maybe you could say a lightsaber, a wand, things like that. They have these tools to help them accomplish the mission, which I believe in Joseph Campbell's original iteration of the hero's journey, he talks about it as slaying the dragon and
Right.
getting the pot of gold, right?
Yes.
So you go through an abyss, right? That moment where the hero falls, they lose someone or something
Like
happens.
Gilgamesh or something
Right.
like that.
Oh yeah. The
Yeah.
Greek myths are hero's journey 101 too.
Yeah.
But eventually
Hercules,
Hercules,
Yeah.
right? And eventually they rise up, they slay the dragon, they get the pot of gold, and as a cycle, they return back to where they once were, to the ordinary world, but having changed, with
They bring Medusa's head back to. Yep.
Exactly. So that's the rough draft of the hero.
But how does that translate
to
to
education?
education? That was the part that I wanted to get into today, because I do feel we do get the call, and sometimes we turn it down. And then we get the call again. It's like the universe is nudging us. How do you bring that to the child's awareness of that?
Sure.
Maybe I'm making it too hard. I don't know.
Well, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say is, well, children love the fact that you are saying you are Luke Skywalker, you are Frodo back, you are Harry Potter, right? I mean, they love being told that they're heroes because, who doesn't want to be a hero, especially when they're younger? It's kind of as we get older that we get in our heads that we're not. I don't know, our self-esteem starts to get lower, I guess.
Right.
And so we don't see ourselves as heroes. But, you could say that there's a hero's journey, almost like you have one every day, upon waking up and coming back to bed. We like to say that there's one every one of those sessions, those 5 to 6 weeks. We have a call to adventure, a specific theme. And then you could say there's one for the whole school year, right? That there's this whole big adventure that you're on this whole year, and you're gonna,
So use the framework of the journey to educate them about mathematics, and they have problems along the way to solve. I'm just using that one. Or you take this fair you have coming up, this entrepreneur fair, but all those little pieces fit into language, communications, mathematics. They're all things that have to be used along this journey.
Sure.
Am I hitting it right?
That's not a bad way of putting it. The thing that I would emphasize is, so let's take mathematics as the example. The idea isn't that math, you're slaying the dragon of addition and you've learned it and now you're going to the next concept. I mean, that's not how I would see it, but you know what? There probably are some ACTONs who would see it that way. So I'll let them say that. It's more about, you have challenges and problems in life. We all do. And it's, how are you going to meet the challenges, those calls to adventure, when you encounter them, right? School stops eventually,
Traditional school does stop. Yes.
Sure.
But the real school of life
doesn't.
never, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We're big on, one of our goals is that they become lifelong learners and they embrace that, because there's always going to be things. So the idea being, you'll hear a lot of people, for example, they'll graduate high school, maybe even college, and they'll say something like, well, no one ever taught me how to do my taxes, right? No one ever taught me financial literacy. It's a big, right? It's a big debate with a lot of people of, this is what we need in education. Well, one reality is we could emphasize, well, we need to teach people about this. Now, I would argue that you're not going to make that much of a dent because, I was in 12th grade and I was a pretty good student, but it's not like you paid attention to everything, right? It didn't really matter unless you cared about it. So the way this relates to me is, there's typically 3 dragons.
Well, I want to pause on those 3 dragons, because it's a perfect time for us to think about what those 3 dragons might be. But before we do, we're going to take a station break for some ads that help pay for the show. I'm Miles McGrath. This is Careology.
Hi, this is Roxy from Careology, and I just want to talk about volunteering. Volunteers don't necessarily have the time, but they have the heart. It takes courage and dedication to offer your time and skills to help out a cause that is a noble act that deserves recognition. Volunteering is a great way to make a difference in our community, and Carebag needs your help. We are looking for dedicated volunteers. So please get a pen, get a paper, and take down this number. It's 772-222-7399. Call us and let us know you're interested. We are looking for volunteers for the evening hours between 5 and 8 p.m. to go to our soup kitchens with our new mobile hygiene pantry. I look forward to hearing from every one of you. And remember, volunteers don't necessarily have the time, but they have the heart. Thank you.
Have you been wondering what your valuables are worth? Bring them to St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin, and their friendly staff will tell you, and they'll pay you top dollar. Hi, it's Evan 9 from the Morning Show, and I can personally tell you from experience that St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin is the place to go for all your jewelry needs.
Hi, this is Hawk Levy from St. Lucie Jewelry and Coins. I want to tell you all thank you for voting us #1 again. Best jewelry and coin dealer, best gold and silver buyer, and best jewelry store.
You know, the demand has never been more for fine jewelry, signed jewelry pieces, coins, coin collections, paper money, Rolex, and all luxury watches, even designer purses. You ask why you should sell to St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin? It's real simple. They buy your jewelry as jewelry and not scrap. They resell everything on the international auction platform and in their local store. St. Lucie Jewelry does free confidential appraisals and house calls as well. St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin, located at US 1 and Walton Road in the Publix Plaza.
If you could reimagine the way you buy a car, what would you do? Make it simple, make negotiations disappear, demand transparency, then experience amazing at your Treasure Coast Lexus dealer. Car Buying Simplified. Treasure Coast Lexus is a proud sponsor of Careology, caring and supporting for our community. Car Buying Simplified. Check out your Treasure Coast Lexus dealer. Create custom business signage that customers can't miss or resist. Let Design a Sign in Port St. Lucie help you get the job done right. Over 80 years combined experience. Get it right the first time. Call 772-337-4027 and tell them Roxy said to call. Remember, call 772-337-4020. Design a Sign in Port St. Lucie.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
Welcome back to Careology with your host, Miles McGrath.
Well, thank you, Cliff. And I am so happy to have Joshua Mason with ACTON Academy here. We were just talking about the hero's journey and the three dragons. What are those three dragons that we might encounter?
I could say there's many, but there's three we like to emphasize with our learners, especially because it's lifelong. Those are resistance, distraction, and victimhood. These tend to be the three things that keep all of us from, accomplishing the things you want to do, right? Distraction probably being the biggest one nowadays
Today,
with our phones,
technology is unbelievable.
right? So you're going to go through life, and even if you feel like you're not very good at math, there's going to be mathematical things that you're going to do for the rest of your life. You can give in to resistance and say, I don't know how to do my taxes, not even going to try, right? Or I don't know how to manage money in my business, I'm not going to try. You can give in to distraction. I can get distracted by a lot of things in my business or just on my phone, or you can give in to victimhood. No one ever taught me this, right? No one ever gave me, what I needed. So that's why we're big on, equipping you with the tools to be able to answer your call to adventure, right? Take on those challenges, because that's how you become a lifelong learner.
That is so well put. Resistance, victimhood, and distraction.
Yeah.
Those are the three?
Those are the three.
I'm really big on mindset. And then I think you just succinctly, if you can have a game plan to deal with, to call those out and say, okay, this is a resistance.
Oh, yeah.
Because I really don't feel like doing that today. That falls under resistance.
Absolutely.
That's I would say my biggest one is I know I need to do it, but I feel like I just don't feel like doing it.
I know. I'm a younger millennial, so it's distraction for me.
Then today there's always another squirrel to go after. And it's so true. And for me, what works there is meditation. That helps me with that one. And then the victim piece is an epidemic. Like, oh, this happened to me and that happened to me. But, I feel like we all have had things happen to us.
Right.
And if you have a plan in effect to deal with when I start. Oh, okay, I'm being a victim again.
Right. Well, so, yeah.
Who's my buddy? I could be, who can help me out of this? That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we allow our learners to do is they can opt out of an activity, but if they opt out, they have to have a 3 monsters or 3 dragons talk with one of the guides.
Get the heck out of here.
Yeah, right. So they come and you say which one is bothering you.
Let's role play a little bit.
Okay.
So what would a typical,
we love role playing.
Let's a typical activity that we would have at ACTON Academy.
Let's say we are doing a writer's workshop. You're having to write a letter to a pen pal at another ACTON Academy.
All right. So are you going to be my guide, or are you going to be my fellow student?
Oh, I'd love to be the guide. Absolutely.
Okay. Josh, I don't feel like doing this writing thing today.
Okay. Why don't you feel like doing that today, Miles?
It hurts my head when I hold a pen, and my handwriting is not the best.
Okay. Which of the 3 monsters do you think is bothering you? Which one do you think that is? Is it resistance, distraction, or victimhood?
I think it's resistance.
Okay. Now, usually I have a sheet, and it's great because we have what you can do about it. And I would point to that and I'd say, so which of these steps do you think you can take? In this case, for example, baby steps is one of the things you can do. Or
I think work with a friend.
Work with a friend. You could ask a friend for help. Okay.
Yeah.
If one of your friends is too busy and doesn't want to help out because they're focused on their work, what's another option you have?
Talk to my guide.
Now, as a guide, I am trying to get you to rely on your buddies, your brain, and any of our tools. So if I'm unable to answer those questions for you, what other tools do you have?
Well, we've got a little workshop over here that's got other examples, I guess. I could look at some of the other writing projects.
That's right. Yeah, we have some examples written out.
Yeah. I see the process here.
Sure.
So you have a framework.
Exactly.
So when they have that frustration level, it allows it to escape.
Right. Absolutely.
They see the solution for the issue.
And they can identify it. We had one boy who came in, and every day at the beginning, I mean, it was put his head down. I can't do it. I mean, it's victimhood to the extreme, right? I mean, he just, and if he didn't get it perfect, puts his head down, can't do it, right? And it took a lot of these monsters, dragons talk with him. And now, I mean, he just did it the other day, and it was like, oh yeah, this used to be a problem. It was like, oh yeah, look how far he's come though.
So now he can be a guide.
Because he identifies it. He says, I know I'm dealing with the victimhood monster.
It's like an escape.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
What do you
see that?
Yeah.
I could see that's probably one of the main reasons you want to do this.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's one of my favorite talks to have with them.
So the teachers are considered guides. And I think if anybody's been listening, I think we understand that Gandalf can't slay all the dragons.
Sure.
And I think that was part of the genius of Tolkien, that Gandalf had to disappear early on in book 1, or in the middle of book 1. So how do you keep from over teaching or over guiding? How do you do that?
Sure. So we have one major commitment, and that is to never answer any questions that the learners ask. There is an exception in some cases made for if you have what we call a spark, which is kind of like our kindergarten, where they're still young, that you're having to model certain things for them, but overall we have a commitment to not answer any questions. So a child can come up to me and say, what time is lunch at? I'm not going to answer that question.
So, but would you answer with a question?
It depends. I could answer it like, well, have you looked at the schedule on the board?
So you do. Okay.
But you're not answering, because we're not trying to, for example, ask on our end. We don't ask leading questions. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you're struggling to do the work because you feel like it's not perfect. Do you think maybe you're struggling with victimhood? I try not to be leading in my questions, right?
I got you.
But correct. I mean, you answer a question with a question. Mr. Josh, did I spell this word right? I might ask, did you ask a buddy, right? Because we're trying to get them to not depend on adults, because that's what ends up happening for a lot of children is they're so dependent on being able to ask an adult and the adult just give them the answer, that they're not developing that self-independence to, how can I figure this out? What tools do I have? Including, as I say, we call it the 3 B's before G, your brain, your buddy, and then the book or the board, because that's where we write information. And the idea is use those 3 Bs before you come to a G, a guide, because that's your tools. That's your lightsaber, your wand.
How it just came to me while we're talking. I would imagine, and I hope we can talk about this, but
Sure.
the interaction with the students versus the interaction with their parents. How they must start using some of these techniques at home. How is that part of the plan here? Are they like, because I'm just imagining as a parent, my kids are in their 20s now. I would have really enjoyed some of these techniques myself when they came to me, and it's the knee-jerk answer the question right away that I'm guilty of. But do you find the parents come to you saying, thank you for teaching me these techniques, or do you have to, how does that work?
We do, throughout the year, we do parent meetings where we talk with them about what we're doing in the program and how they might implement some things. Because we let them know, we're like, look, if you bring your child to Acton, it's not going to be the traditional experience where you're going to see a difference at home. I mean, we vote on a lot of things at Acton. I didn't really get into the fact that we're learner driven, which is a whole different concept from teacher led. And that is that they're coming up with rules. They're voting all the time in new rules and consequences. So at home, your child is going to want to, oh, what movie should we watch tonight? Hercules or Aladdin? An Acton child, and most times is going to be like, let's take a vote, right? We remove in Acton, we remove a lot of the because I said so aspect of that adult to child relationship, because we give them so much opportunity to lead. So for the parents at home, yeah, I mean, we've had examples of, again, because we're not trying to force them on their journey, we're trying to guide them. One of the things we'll do is offer incentives, motivation to help them if they feel like there's a lack of motivation for maybe getting to a certain place in math. So what we've seen is our parents have started implementing that. For example, one of them, her daughter would come home with her lunch not all the way eaten. She'd have a ton of food, so she wasn't eating lunch during lunchtime. And she might come to us and be like, hey, can you make sure she eats? And we're like, hey, this is learner driven. We are not imposing that authoritative relationship necessarily. If this is a problem that you have, you can talk with your daughter about it, right? So this mom came up with this thing of every time you come home and your lunchbox has any food in it, you have to pay me $1. That's your consequence, right? Another one, her son, he always, after we get out, he just runs around, never wants to come home. So she said, hey, what should be your consequence when you don't come when I say to? And let me tell you, children will vote in the most harsh consequences possible. Is what we've seen time and time.
Your job really is to keep it from Lord of the Flies.
Oh my gosh. So she asked him, and he said, I get no screens the rest of the day. So that's their consequence. He did that to himself. Yeah.
So he came up with his own consequence.
He came up with it, right? So it's an example of she gave him the opportunity to have that voice, right? And now it has implications at home too, right? And he,
that speaks directly to a dear friend of mine. He says the best, and I'm not equating, firing people when you're in an employee relationship, but the best time letting someone go is when you lay out all the facts and you say, what are the consequences? And they say, well, you really should let me go. Because those are the best scenarios when somebody has to move on.
Yeah.
It's similar to, they come up with their own consequence to their action.
Well, and that, in a traditional setting, you might have I remember there's some that have cards, like if you curse at the teacher, okay, you get a yellow card and red card, and those have different things. Again, we have them vote on their consequences. So for example, we had 2 boys break a broom in our studio, and it came up, what should be the consequence if you break a studio item? And originally the one they voted for was you lose, every Friday we have an hour period called Fun Friday. They're like, you lose 3 Fun Fridays. We're like, holy cow, just for breaking a.
What if they go too far? Do you ask them, do you think that's appropriate? Do you ask questions on that?
Well, I mean, so there's 2 options we could take. Again, because we have a younger group, there is some role modeling involved. So we may say, well, we'll take that to the owners. Because for example, Fun Friday is attached to academic goals. We didn't want it to be related to behavior because we want that to be incentive for that. So sometimes what we'll say is, okay, we'll have to talk as owners and decide if we accept those terms. But that very rarely is that the case. What we'll do is let's let it play out, and then let's come and revisit it. Does this seem like a fair consequence? If you broke an item, and in this case, they even argued, well, it's still usable. It's like, okay, so if you break an item and it's still usable, is losing 3 free times or fun Fridays too burdensome, not burdensome enough, or just right? You know, so you come back to it. It's not set in stone.
So I want to spend some time here. You've got an amazing event coming up in February, this entrepreneur fair.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, how does that play into this whole education and what you're teaching?
Yeah,
This concept of this fair.
well, it really embodies our belief, which is, well, it embodies our model of learning to learn to do, and learn to be, especially over learning to know and to test, is what we like to say. You're going to fail in life, and a lot of us fail all the time, especially if you're an entrepreneur. It's like you should expect it. One of the worst things that can happen to children is learning to hate failure so much that you hate trying, right? You stop trying. So Children's Business Fair is a perfect representation of Acton, because
When is that going to be?
oh, it's going to be Saturday, February 10th, 10 a.m. at the fields outside our campus, the church we're hosted in, which is 1151 Southwest Del Rio Boulevard.
1151 Southwest Del Rio Boulevard on February
10th from
That's
10
a
to 1.
Saturday. Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
And it's open to other, it's not just our learners. It's open to, in fact, right now, if I go look, we'll have a cap at 50 businesses, and we have, I believe it's 30 other kidpreneurs, right? Other businesses that are not from our Acton. But again, you know, so there, some people, to teach entrepreneurship, they talk about teaching it, which would be, let's have them learn the vocab, right? Concepts like profit, like, you know, loss, all that type of stuff. And then maybe you do like a fair, a mock fair, where people come in, you give them raffle tickets and they spend those raffle tickets. It's like, no, for Acton, we're about real world challenges. We're about learning by experience. So this is a legitimate, it's just like a farmer's market, right? Those children are there selling to adults, to whoever comes, for real money, and they keep the money. We don't take any of that money, right? And so we've had 2 previous fairs, and it embodies it perfectly, because on the one end, you know, just on Friday, I was talking to a boy who had participated in the last fair, and he didn't do well. He was already running a little jewelry business, and he told me he was making like $80 a day apparently doing that, which I was pretty surprised by, because he's 11. At the fair, he made $20 in sales. You know, so he lost.
Too much competition.
Well, maybe. He called me, and he was talking to me. He's like, I reflected on that, and I realized
No, he didn't say
no,
that.
I'm 100% serious. Listen, you can go to my Facebook, because I posted about it. I was like, what just happened?
I reflected on that. I'm going to use that myself.
Listen,
before I talk to someone. And I was reflecting on our conversation. Wow.
He realized he had too much inventory. He had a co-owner who was not as committed. He had a part-time employee, which he said that actually worked, but he had too much stuff. He had, you know, that was one of his biggest things. But he even told me, he said, there also wasn't that much attendance at that last fair. And there wasn't. It wasn't as much as the previous one. And I told him, yeah, why do you think that is? It was a May hot day.
You asking
right? This kid, he doesn't even go to Acton. And it was like, do you think it was because it was a hot day? Our location was kind of hidden. Was it we had done it too soon after the previous fair, so it wasn't as novel? And he said, I think we need to get the word out. So he's like, you guys should contact the city and get them to promote it. And I said, that sounds like a great idea. Go for it. And he did. He calls me back, and
that sounds like a great idea. Go for it. Look at you.
Right?
Look at you, guide.
I mean, and he did it. And I got a call from the city saying, so there's this kid calling about a fair. We just have to, if we're going to promote it, we have to verify, like, you know, what's the fair and all that. I said, sure. So I'm having to email them. But I was like, that's it 101, right? I mean, he failed at that first fair, and he learned from it, and he's not stopping from trying, right?
I reflected on that. Well, if we could just have one thing happen from this show, is that we could all reflect on something that we thought was a fail and turn it into a success.
Yeah,
this would be a worthwhile show today.
That
is a beautiful story. I love that story.
Oh yeah,
I love that story. So if somebody has a child who's an entrepreneur, they could participate in this fair. There's 20 open spots.
Yeah, it should be about 20. It might be
what age?
Less
what
than
age,
20 now.
What age? What are the ages?
Ages 5 to 17.
Now, do they have to pay for the booth?
Yeah, there's a $25 booth reservation fee essentially.
Okay, so they get a booth.
Spot.
And you had the fair last year?
Yep, we had 2 last year. Yeah.
2 fairs last year. And would you say, what's your goal for attendance this year?
Oh man, I mean, at least 1,000, if not
Okay.
2,000. You know, the spot we're in is in the heart of a residential area where there's traffic, so I'm hoping it will really boost attendance compared to last year where we were kind of hidden.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That is, I could see why the fair is a little cornerstone in this, because they do have a journey preparing for the fair. You know, what's the
Yep.
product I'm going to do at the fair? What are the needs out there? How can I put this together?
Right.
How do I overcome my fear of presenting? And,
Sure.
you know, we all have these views of salespeople, and so I have to overcome that. And
Right.
but it's an entrepreneur. You know,
Right.
it's an entrepreneur, which is in a different category.
Mm-hmm.
What's the feedback you've gotten
Oh,
across the board on these fairs that you've done before?
yeah. I mean, so we've been told by other Actons only do 1 a year. The reason we did a second is because our first fair we gave out surveys to everybody, you know, to give us feedback. Are you familiar with the Net Promoter Score, that general idea in business?
No, tell me about it.
Okay, it's this classic question. I believe is originated from some Harvard Business School professor, but it's on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you recommend this product, service, whatever, to a friend or colleague? And it's considered like the #1 metric you need for your business, because you want it to be either the average score, or I can't remember the
8 or higher,
equation
I think is what you want,
exactly, right? And it was like a 9.6, right? So it was like, oh, and we even asked them how often should we do it, and some people were like, we should do this monthly, and we're like, oh, okay, but we learned our lesson there, because I think it was just so exciting.
Too
They're like,
much.
let's do it monthly, but it's
Right.
like it loses its novelty. You know,
Right.
it needs to be an annual event.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, does each fair have its own theme?
No, because you know, we don't want to. I mean, it's about them, right?
Right.
If we don't
Well,
want,
if they came up with the idea of a theme, then you would, right?
that's a fair point. You know,
Yeah.
especially if when we launch like a middle school or our version of a high school someday, if those learners wanted to put on oh man, let's hand over the keys, let's let them experiment.
So this has been a journey for you, this hero's journey. Tell me about some of the dragons you had to slay.
Oh,
You know, oh, I might want to do this acting thing. To now you've done it. It's been almost a year. What are some of your dragons you had to overcome?
oh man. I mean, resistance and distraction have always been my dragons. I mean, resistance to starting it, you know, because my wife and I we're working on the kids thing, right? But we don't have any of our own. And the goal originally for me was, after seeing Acton, like I told my wife when I saw Acton in Austin, I said, look, we are never sending our kid to any other school than Acton, and if there's not one where we are, then we're starting it. And so I started one,
Well,
and it's like,
I mean, that doesn't tell a potential parent how invested you are in
Right.
this. Then what else does?
right. And I figured, you know, because I talked to so many families here who wanted an alternative, I was like, let's start one now, and I'll have a school built for my children when they're ready to go. All that to say, you know, there was resistance all along the way of like, I don't have kids. Can I run a school? You know, and I'm dealing with parents, and you know, every parent is worried about their child. Like that's,
course.
you know, it's like the #1 thing on your mind. And so every day I deal with the fears of that, you know, if you have someone else's children in your care and their growth and development, you know. So those are the dragons that I'm slaying every day. I don't know if I've completely laid down a smog just yet, you know.
No, I mean, I think we need to keep those in the forefront. So
Yeah.
so the resistance there. What are the distractions?
Oh, I mean, man, like I said, I'm a millennial. It's so, especially on weekends, you're so exhausted. You're like, why can't I just, you know, sit down and watch some TV or some movies or
Right.
whatever, play some games. I mean, those are some examples. And then honestly, distraction by, I think a lot of people, more than they recognize, they deal with being distracted by that which is good, but not that which is best. You know, there are a lot of good things that I get
Ah.
distracted by,
I see.
but what's the best thing I should be doing for my acting right now? You know, that's the thing I can get distracted
How do
by.
you recharge?
Oh, my MBA, I was lucky if I got 5 hours of sleep a night because it was that 100-hour weeks. So somehow I'm able to do 6 hours of sleep. That's a pretty good charge. I do exercise, which helps a ton.
Right.
But besides
Are you working
that,
with Ben?
oh, I'm not. I talked about it, but he said, no, you're fine. You're young.
Okay,
Like,
so he checked you out.
Yeah, he did. He did.
That was
so,
good. So
but
you went to your one of your guides.
yeah, all right.
That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. So for parents that are thinking about this, they've heard the show.
hmm
they have a child in the K through 4-year-old range.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade,
Right.
the K through fourth grade range. What do you want them to consider before calling you?
You're a good fit for Acton if you are running towards something better rather than away from something bad. If you have, you shouldn't be coming to us because you're fed up with any of the like political or whatever issues at your school. It should be that you see this aspect of the dragons, the hero's journey, and you feel like, I want that for my child. It's not, I'm just trying to find another school. And so you should come to our website. You should start there.
Okay.
Acton PSL.
So just if really slowly, what is that website?
That's actonpsl.org. Acton is ACTON.
Okay, so just take a perusal of the website.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when is this fair? Because this sounds awesome.
I know.
When is that fair?
Yeah, Saturday, February 10th.
Saturday. So that's, if for those in your mind, it's the Saturday before Super Bowl Sunday.
There
so
you
it's a
go.
good way to get your entrepreneurial
I didn't even
spirit on
realize
for
that.
my kid right before the Super Bowl Sunday, which is all about entrepreneurship on every possible level.
Mm-hmm.
For that. So we've got a couple, we got like, I don't know, a minute left here. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And I'm going to read this shirt. He's got on a guide. So they don't have teachers at Acton. They have guides. And the definition that Josh has the shirt on says: a non-judgmental challenger, cheerleader, game maker, asker of Socratic questions, listener, equipper of sheepdogs, a growth mindset praiser, lives their own hero's journey. And on this Dr. Martin Luther King Day, he was a guide for all of us. He was a hero.
Absolutely.
I can't think of a better interview for today. And Joshua, thank you so much. Clearly, you're living your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for being on the show.
Thanks, Miles.
You've been listening to Careology, the science of caring, presented by Carebag. Tune in every Monday morning in the 10 o'clock hour for Careology on WPSL Port St. Lucie.